You know what's going to come out that's new? All the stuff about the accusers would show that many of them have made up stories. We know that there are accusers who have been paid $50,000 who never, ever even met Jeffrey Epstein. This is a scam on all sides because Epstein is so radioactive. If anybody comes in and says, "Oh, I had sex with Epstein and he did this to me, that to me," they get $50,000 from the Epstein fund. And so these false accusations are rampant. And what the courts won't do is give out the information that shows that a lot of the accusers were lying because they want to protect the victims. What are they, victims? Who's the victim if somebody is falsely accused? It's the false accuser. 10 Commandments, thou shalt not bear false witness. And going back to the Bible, if you bore false witness against somebody, you know what your punishment was? Exactly the same as if the witness was truthful, that the person who was the villain would get. So if you said in the biblical times, "Oh, I saw somebody murder somebody," and it was false, you got the death penalty. But we're allowing false witnesses to get away with murder and defamation. And a lot of these claims are absolutely false. I know that for a fact. I can tell you the names of people. I can say, do it right now.
All right, guys, I hope you had a great weekend. I don't think any of us went to a No Kings rally. I don't think so at all. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit because it was quite an interesting sight to see these folks out there over the weekend. I don't know, obviously, what the weather was throughout the country, but here in the Northern Virginia, D.C. area, it was a gorgeous day. I'm like, who wants to spend a day talking to themselves, carrying signs, watching people in like costumes and furry costumes? It looks so weird to me. And by the way, I know that they want to say it was peaceful, and I'm sure there weren't a lot of violence, but the signs they carried and some of the messages were highly inappropriate, provocative, violent, mocking some of the violence that's occurred to President Trump, to Charlie. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about this after my interview with Alan Dershowitz, because there is so much to get to with him. If you think about what's going on, these strikes in Venezuela, and he just wrote a whole new book called The Preventive State. You talk about preventing things, what's going on with us shooting these drug boats coming out of Venezuela to the United States. That's preventative on a whole new level. But we got a lot to break down with that. We are in day 20 of our government shutdown and no real end in sight, which is fascinating because I don't understand how the Democrats, they had their rally. Maybe it's now time. And John Thune, by the way, the Senate Majority Leader, has said, we'll give you your vote on your health care. We're not going to guarantee an outcome because it's a scam and it's ridiculous. And they created this problem. Let's just, when you're talking to your friends, remember this. This was their bill. They sunset this for a reason because it was supposed to be temporary. And now they want to blame anyone else for their misactions. I mean, let's keep all that in context. But we have a lot to break down with Alan Dershowitz. So before I get to that, tomorrow, we've got Bill O'Reilly. Wednesday, Jody Arrington, he's the House Chairman of the Budget Committee. So this budget, the process, everything that's going on, we're going to get a lot of insight there. And then Friday, Victor Davis Hanson. So, if there's a reason that you want to hit the subscribe and notification button, this is that time. And always, always, please. I love the one cool thing about the show is it's everywhere. YouTube, Rumble, X, Apple, Spotify on the audio side. The more places that you can subscribe, number one, it's a great backup. So we did a great rant this weekend. I want to show you a piece of this because it was huge and it was very popular with you guys to explain the censorship that we face. Take a look. They don't want you to know what Eric Trump and his family went through. They suppressed it. Think about it. These are the same people who lie all the time, though. They suppressed Hunter Biden's laptop. They told us all sorts of stories about COVID. That's what I'm talking about. We face censorship and shadow banning. And so sometimes just going to that audio version over on Apple and Spotify, I know it is super helpful, just to be clear, for the show. But it also is a nice backup. So maybe you're traveling, maybe we get banned someday, but making sure that you've got a backup for that show. Because when YouTube decides at some point that they don't like what we're saying, and we explained it all in that rant video, then you're going to be happy it did. All right, before I bring in Alan Dershowitz, we talk a lot about MAHA and the agenda and wellness and all the things that we're doing as human beings to make ourselves healthier, our country healthier. But it's not just as humans. I have a dog. I always talk about this because I love my dog, and we've had 3 over the years. But one of the cool things about the MAHA agenda is it's not just humans. There's a company called Rough Greens that is adding a supplement. It's like adding a MAHA approved supplement for your pet, for your dog. And it supports long-term health. It provides live bioavailable nutrients and essential vitamins, minerals, probiotics, all for your dog. And it helps with their skin, their coat, their well-being. It's so amazing because it's got antioxidants and inflammatory compounds that they don't get through their dog food. The cool thing is you'll see results pretty quickly. Like I started scooping, it's just a little scoop thing, and you put it right on top of whatever food you give them already. It's a great supplement. My dog laps it all up. I love Rough Greens. It keeps the dog healthy. You know that it's making them better nutritionally and helping them long-term wise. You can see it in their coat. They look shinier and healthier and happier. You can notice it in a lot of the other dog ways, if you know what I'm talking about. So you don't have to change your dog's food. You can, Rough Greens right now is offering a free jumpstart bag. All you have to do is cover the shipping for this. This is what I started with when I started with Rough Greens. Use discount code SPICER, SPICER, to claim your free jumpstart trial bag at roughgreens.com. It's really cute, by the way. It comes with poop bags and all this kind of stuff. I love this stuff. So go to Rough Greens, RUFF greens.com. Use promo code SPICER to get that free jumpstart bag. And like I said, it's great because you're adding an element of health and wellness and MAHA to your pet. So go to roughgreens.com. Use promo code SPICER for that free jumpstart bag. But speaking of wellness, you guys know this. I have been talking about this for a year now. My Beam Dream Powder. And look, here are all the cocoa cinnamon ones. I love that flavor. But the last couple of weeks, I want to show you, I crushed the bag here of the brownie battered flavor. I love this stuff. And I'm telling you, each of the flavors I fall in love with. And the cool thing about Beam is that if you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, it's all natural. 5 ingredients: reishi, apigenin, L-theanine, magnesium, and melatonin. All natural stuff you've probably tried individually, now in one amazing, amazing blend. I love each of these flavors. I would drink it all day long. The problem is it puts you to sleep and it helps you stay asleep, and that's not good. But right before I go to bed, about a half hour, I take a scoop, I put it in some water, I put it 30 seconds in the microwave. Some people use milk, some people don't heat it up. It doesn't matter. I've done it each way. There's no wrong way. But I'm going to tell you, the result is the same. You put your head on your pillow, you wake up the next morning feeling refreshed, ready to go. I fall asleep, I stay asleep. I love this stuff. And Beam is giving all of my listeners and the Ultimate Patriot discount 40% off. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Shopbeam, BEAM.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer up to 40% off. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in the Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz, who is the author of his 55th new book called The Preventive State, The Challenge of Preventing Serious Harms While Preserving Essential Liberties. Professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor, welcome back. Always good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. I know I've lost count. What are you at, like 540 books now? I don't know when you find the time. What's the case for the latest one? Like, it seems like it's a different angle, and I was sort of intrigued by who's. I mean, you have a list of people who are back in this book that I thought was sort of a potpourri of the political spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, it includes Justice Stephen Breyer, and includes people on the left, people in the center. It's a very serious book about how we are moving. It's called The Preventive State. How we're moving away from reacting to dangerous harms to trying to prevent them. Obviously, a perfect example is the United States and Israeli decision to go after Iran's nuclear reactors before they had a chance to create a bomb, locking people up when they're on bail instead of letting them out so they can commit crimes. Those are preventive. Obviously, inoculations to prevent the spread of disease. So my thesis is that we are moving as a country toward more prevention and away from mere reaction. And we don't have the jurisprudence for that. You know, we say when we convict people of crime, better 10 guilty go free than 1 innocent be wrongly confined. But we don't say how many instances of terrorism are we prepared to prevent, at what cost of how many innocent people being locked up. So this is an attempt to bring together all the preventive mechanisms, medical, legal, environmental, and to try to create a jurisprudence. It's kind of the summary of 60 years of work I've done on this subject. And I've written a lot of articles on this, academic articles. I decided to write a popular book for ordinary readers who are not lawyers and not professors about this very, very important development. And I got a lot of support for it from, as you say, people from very, very diverse backgrounds, because it's not political. It's completely analytic, and it applies to all Americans who want to prevent danger, but also don't want to create a police state in the effort to prevent danger. So it tries to strike a balance between prevention of harm and prevention of denial of civil liberties.
All right, well, then it's actually a perfect example that I was going to bring up, which is this Venezuelan strikes, right? So the U.S. is taking on these drug boats that the government's argument is they're full of fentanyl, they come to the United States, and that they would infect hundreds of thousands of Americans potentially. So this is a preventative attack.
Right.
Here's my question. Is it legal?
Yes, it's absolutely legal. The question is it moral? And is it moral? It depends on how many innocent people you get. If you are accurate and the only people that you're shooting at and killing are drug dealers, who's shedding any tears for that? If, on the other hand, in order to prevent 10 fentanyls from landing in the United States, you have to shoot at 20 boats, 10 of which are going to be innocent people, that creates a hard problem. But the United States government, starting obviously with Thomas Jefferson, the halls of Montezuma, the shores of Tripoli, we sing that song. What were the shores of Tripoli? They were pirates that were endangering American sailors and American ships in the Mediterranean. And Jefferson went after them and got them. And from the beginning of time, the United States has taken the position that we are entitled to protect our shores before they get to our shores. Israel did the same thing, obviously, when it prevented the flotilla, even though that didn't present a real danger. That presented just political concerns. But countries are entitled to go beyond the 3 mile or 5 mile or whatever international law provides at any given day in order to prevent dangers from coming to our country. If we could have prevented 9/11, obviously, by killing the people before they got to America's shores, we would have done it, and we should have done it. So prevention is crucially important, but it has to be done within the context of understanding that we sometimes make mistakes.
All right. First of all, way to work in the Marine Corps hymn on its 250th anniversary. That was very well done. Very well done. But let me ask you this. What concerns me from a civilian side is, let's just say we're in the South China Sea. China shoots at one of our boats and says, hey, we're preventing what we believe was some kind of imminent attack. And say, guys, you guys went after Venezuela. We thought you were going to attack us, and we took preventive states. Tell me, how do we, what prevents the preventative, your argument from flipping on our heads?
I'll tell you, you would have gotten an A+ in my class. That's the
first.
That's it in a chapter in the book. And I say virtually every attack has been called preventive. The Japanese claim that they attacked Pearl Harbor because we were planning an attack from Pearl Harbor on the Japanese mainland. Even Hitler claimed that his attack on Poland was preventive. Everybody uses the term preventive, but, as Potter Stewart said about hardcore pornography, we know it when we see it. And we know that the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was not. It was aggressive. But you get into tough issues. Israel's attack in 1967 on Egypt and Syria, because they had information that Syria and Egypt were about to attack. Is that preventive? Is it preemptive? Is it reactive? These are hard questions. And that's why I could write a book about it. And I address all those questions and show how difficult a decision it is, especially in the tit-for-tat world in which we live. Because if we take preventive action, they'll take preventive action. Look at what happened to the Cuban Missile Crisis, another perfect example. We were worried that there might be nuclear weapons 60 miles from our shores, so we thought about taking preventive action, and cooler minds prevailed, and the Soviets pulled back, and we pulled back, and we prevented a cataclysmic mutual attack on both of us. So there's great dangers in prevention. I'm not saying prevention is the panacea. I'm saying it exists. It's happening.
Right.
It happens. We better think about it. And that's what I try to do in this 55th book of mine, The Preventive State.
55th book. I don't think I've read 55 books, and you've written 55. All right, so let me just ask you, you brought up Israel a couple of times, and you're an expert in this area. You've written before. One of multiple, I'm sure several of your books have dealt with it. I know one of them recently. What do you think of the current deal, and does it hold?
I like it. I like the current deal. I think it a great credit not only to President Trump, but he couldn't have done it unless Israel had laid the foundation for it by neutralizing Iran, by neutralizing Hamas and Hezbollah. This was a perfect combination of American diplomacy on top of Israeli military prowess. It shows when the two countries work together, we are invincible. But when we're apart, each of us have vulnerabilities. And so I liked the deal. I thought it was good. My friends, both of them are friends of mine, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, are, as you know, in Israel, trying to make sure the deal holds. I think the deal will hold because President Trump wants it to hold. Look, there's never been a more powerful president in my lifetime in the world than Donald Trump. You may love him, you may hate him, but nobody can deny that he has asserted American power. He is telling Israel what they can do and what they can't do. Previous Prime Minister of Israel have told President Bush, they've told President Reagan, sorry, we appreciate your advice, but we're going after the Asurk reactor. We're going after the Syrian reactor. You don't do that with Donald Trump. If Donald Trump tells you to do something and to forbear from doing something, you do something. Probably one of the most important meetings in the White House in the Oval Office was the meeting with Zelensky. Because every time I talk to Israelis, the first response is, we don't want to become Zelensky. We don't want to create a problem with the president. And so he has asserted his power in a way that has been very influential on all sides of every issue. Hamas doesn't want to take risks with him. Israel doesn't want to take risks with him. And as long as he uses good judgment, I think he will go down in history as a very good president in the international sphere. And so I'm hoping that it will hold.
All right, I hate to interrupt this amazing conversation with Professor Dershowitz, but Halloween is just around the corner. We're like 10 days away. And if you want to have the ultimately cool Halloween candy treat, don't worry about the candy stuff that you can get at the supermarket. Do something unbelievably memorable and different. Get a Keksi gourmet cookie. Keksi. These things are unbelievable. And right now they've created this limited Halloween cookie box packed with 6 cookies, right? They've got one called the Mummy Cookie. It's a chocolate cookie stuffed with Nutella and packed with white chocolate chips and then topped with their homemade frosting. Look, it's a holiday, so you can cheat a little. But I'm telling you, and these cookies are worth it. It is a whole new type of cookie that you've probably never tried. When I say a gourmet cookie, I mean a gourmet cookie. Listen, it is unbelievable. You will be so noticed if you hand out something that's different and like completely enjoyable. They have a whole range of cookies that you can get year round. The Halloween cookie box, though, only comes out in limited edition right now. Once Halloween comes or the stock is depleted, it's gone. So if you want to have something really cool and unique and different for Halloween, go get this now. Go to Keksi, KEKSI.com, Keksi cookie. And if you want any of the other ones, not the Halloween, I can't do that. I'm only so good. But any of those other amazing gourmet cookies, maybe it's a gift. Maybe you want to get ready for Christmas or the other holidays or Thanksgiving. You want the amazing dessert that everyone's going to go, where did you get these cookies? Go to KeksiCookie.com and use code Sean, SEAN 15, Sean 15 for 15% off everything else. You just can't get it on the Halloween box. I can only do so much. That's how good these things are. They don't need a discount code. Keksi Cookie. So go to Keksi, KEKSI.com. Use code Sean 15. All right, back to my great discussion with Alan Dershowitz. All right, I want to get a couple takes on some hot legal issues. The Pentagon has asked reporters who want to cover the Pentagon from inside to sign an agreement that they won't solicit classified information from people that they would encounter in the Pentagon. In response, most major news outlets have said, we won't sign it, we're walking out. I don't believe that, in my personal opinion, that's not a violation of the First Amendment. The press has a right to cover the Pentagon. The press has a right to write whatever they want. But if you want to come into the building, you can't attempt to break the law, i.e. solicit classified information. Sure. This is your expertise. Tell me where the line is between the First Amendment and the right of the government to say, if you want to access this building, you can do it under these circumstances.
Correct. People forget, they honor Daniel Ellsberg. Daniel Ellsberg shouldn't be honored. He was a crook. He was a thief. and maybe even committed some variation of the violation of the Espionage Act, he stole material. And the Times was right to publish it. But no journalist has the right to seek it and solicit it. Cy Hirsch used to do that all the time, and he got Pulitzer Prizes and all kinds of rewards for that. It's wrong. You can publish classified material if somebody gives it to you. But if you solicit classified material, you are a criminal, not protected by the First Amendment. That's clear. And I challenge any criminal lawyer, any constitutional lawyer to challenge me on that. It is a crime to solicit somebody to give you classified material.
So just so you're clear, because this is, without having the academic credentials of Alan Dershowitz, this has been my argument, which is if you want to go into the building, you can cover it and write anything you want. But the Pentagon's saying we're going to let you come in and access our people, which, by the way, I've told people you can't go into the Department of Education. You can't go into the Department of Health and Human Services. The State Department and DOD are probably the only two organizations outside of the White House that let reporters come in and pretty much roam freely. But we're not allowing you to do it and allowing you to break a law. So that restriction is not a violation of the First Amendment.
Absolutely not. When you were press secretary, you were very open and you would give people all the information that was available that you were allowed to do. But if the New York Times ever came to you and said, hey, Sean, we know that when the president briefs you, occasionally we'll give you some information that's classified and tells you not to tell us. If you give us that information, we'll write a good story about you. That's a crime. And if you said yes to that, you would be a conspirator. So you did your job right. But you, as a person who had access to some kinds of confidential material, I don't know your level of access, you could not give that material to somebody in the New York Times. And if they asked for it, they would be committing a crime.
So that's the key line that I may still maintain today, a very high security clearance because of my military duties. But that's the key point that you're making that I don't think people get. It's one thing for me as a possessor of who has access to it, but if I solicit it, that in itself is a crime, correct?
Absolutely. Soliciting a crime is a crime under federal law and under state law. And virtually every country in the world makes that a crime. It's either a conspiracy or solicitation. And what is solicitation? Well, solicitation is attempted conspiracy. Because if the person agrees, it's a conspiracy. So if you solicit somebody to do a crime, it's as if you go to somebody and say, look, I have this enemy. I really would like you, if I pay you $10,000 to bump him off. That's a crime. If the person says, yes, I'll do it, it's conspiracy. But if the person says, no, I'm not going to do it, and he turns you in, you've already committed a crime by soliciting him to do it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Now I actually feel a little bit more solid in my defense of this.
Right.
I want to turn to the House of Representatives. We're in a government shutdown, as you know, day 20. When the House returns, this member from Arizona, Gravala, is going to get sworn in. Ostensibly, the discharge petition regarding the Epstein files will pass. It'll go to the Senate. It will die a slow death there. The president will never sign it into action. But what is it, regardless of whether this discharge petition passes or not, what should, not will, but what should the government do with respect to the Epstein files?
Every single piece of paper should be revealed. And you want to hear the big secret? It won't really give you new information about people who are accused. We know who's accused. We know Virginia Giuffre has written a new book. It'll be out in the next few days. And she names names. She's named names before. She named George Mitchell. She named Bill Richardson. She named me. She obviously withdrew the naming of me and said she may have confused me with somebody else. She named Ehud Barak. She named a prominent professor, another professor, prominent professor at Harvard. We know that. That's not new. You know what's going to come out that's new? All the stuff about the accusers would show that many of them have made up stories. We know that there are accusers who have been paid $50,000 who never, ever even met Jeffrey Epstein. This is a scam on all sides because Epstein is so radioactive. If anybody comes in and says, oh, I had sex with Epstein and he did this to me, that to me, they get $50,000 from the Epstein fund. And so these false accusations are rampant. And what the courts won't do is give out the information that shows that a lot of the accusers were lying because they want to protect the victims. What are they victims? Who's the victim if somebody is falsely accused? It's the false accuser. 10 Commandments, thou shalt not bear false witness. And going back to the Bible, if you bore false witness against somebody, you know what your punishment was? Exactly the same as if the witness was truthful, that the person who was the villain would get. So if you said in the biblical times, oh, I saw somebody murder somebody and it was false, you got the death penalty. But we're allowing false witnesses to get away with murder and defamation. And a lot of these claims are absolutely false. I know that for a fact. I can tell you the names of people. I can do it right now. A woman named Sarah Ransom wrote articles and letters for the New York Post to a woman named Maureen Callahan. Name names. I want to name names. In which she said she has videotapes of Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Richard Branson, all having sex with young people. She said that. She wanted it printed. She filed affidavits under oath, subject to perjury. And we have evidence that everything she said was false. Everything she said was false. She made it all up. And that's the evidence that's being suppressed.
So the real story here that no one's talking about isn't what Jeffrey Epstein did. It's, according to what I'm hearing you say, what he didn't do, actually.
Well, we don't know what he did and what he didn't do. But I can tell you, Sarah Ransom and Mary Farmer, or whatever her name is, something Farmer, made up false stories. And yet CNN puts Farmer all the time. Ransom is quoted all the time. These are people, for example, the Farmer, a woman who's made all these accusations. She's denied the Holocaust. She has said that Jews are the pedophiles of the world. But you don't see that because the media is afraid to go after the, quote, victims. And there are some victims. There are some very, very seriously hurt victims. But there are also some perpetrators who call themselves victims. And they're the ones that are being protected now by the courts. And therefore, I challenge every single document should be revealed, not only some of them, every one of them. You can't have selective. You can't have somebody saying, oh, I had sex with somebody, and that's revealed, naming the person, but not revealed the fact that she, at another context, admitted she made it up. That's what's best.
So can you, what, and I guess I'm asking to surmise and conjecture, but like, why wouldn't the DOJ want to release this and say, see, all of this is out there? What would be the motive not to get more out?
The DOJ, it's the courts, it's the judges, it's federal judges in New York that are suppressing this. They are suppressing this because they say we will not allow anything that criticizes victims to be produced. But even the Republicans, even the ones and the Democrats who are calling for the release of the documents are all saying, oh, of course, protect the victims. Don't release their information. That's the deep fallacy. We don't know who the victims are. We know some of the victims, but we don't know these people who claim they're victims, who are victimizing innocent people. Sarah Ransom, perfect example. Please, media, investigate her. She claimed under oath, she accused people, including me, but including Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and then she admitted it was all false. But the admissions are being suppressed. Only the accusations are out there. The same thing with Farmer and others.
Are there other people, other prominent politicians? I mean, it sounds to me what you're saying now is that if I were to, someone were to have their name released, they say, I heard what Professor Alan Dershowitz said, this is all a lie, I'm being framed. How do we start to figure out who is a perpetrator? For example, you saw Prince Andrew this weekend say all of his titles are gone because it seemed to me he was getting in front of that, versus somebody who says, I wasn't there. You've been very clear about, hey, I'm going to clear my name because this is ridiculous. How do we know the difference?
Very easy for me because I've never had sex with anybody other than my wife from the day I met Jeffrey Epstein. Anybody. So you can ask me any question you want. The problem with Prince Andrew, he was known as Randy Andy, and he didn't want to sit down for a deposition because they could ask him about other people. You can ask me about all the people you want in the world. You get the most boring answers you've ever gotten. Yeah, no, I shook hands with her once. But so many of the people who have been accused can't bring lawsuits because they don't have good backgrounds and good records. That doesn't mean that they are being truthfully accused. In fact, smart false accusers will go after people who can't respond. The dumb thing about my accusers is they went after me. And I am so completely innocent that I had nothing to hide and nothing to lose by suing them all and winning my cases. But when you go after Prince Andrew, you're going to get a settlement because Prince Andrew's mommy said to him, "Oh, we can't have you sit for a deposition. It'll be embarrassing to the crown, embarrassing to the throne." So he had to settle the case, and that was a terrible, terrible mistake on his part.
Well, unless he's guilty, right?
Huh?
Unless he was guilty.
Well, even if he was guilty, what was he guilty of? Having sex with a 19-year-old who was paid $1,500 to have sex with him? He would have been much better off if he was guilty admitting that and saying, yeah, I was perfectly lawful. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't know she was getting paid $15,000, but she was being paid for it. It was perfectly consensual. He would have been able to prevail on that. He was already Randy Andy. But once he started being interviewed and not necessarily being completely straight and candid about everything, that's where his troubles began. You're going to win only if you can tell the truth about everything, as I can, and if you never, ever, ever withhold information. From the day I was accused, I said, I will never refuse to answer a question. Ask me anything you want. I will give you the information. I also kept records so I could prove conclusively that I never was at the places where they said I was at. So I was absolutely the wrong person to accuse, but others may have been the right people to accuse, even if they're innocent, because they can't defend themselves.
Yeah, lesson learned. Don't go after Alan Dershowitz.
On issues like that, you can go after me for who I defend. You can go after me for, my defense of President Trump. People do. I spoke recently at the University of Idaho, and you should see the emails. They were attacking me like mad because I defended Donald Trump. Okay, I understand that, but the one thing you can't go after me on is my sex life.
Yeah. By the way, I've always said, I hope you don't take issue with this. I think you defend the rule of law. Like what you've always stood to me for, someone has said, this is the law, this is what you, so you either defend it like the First Amendment or you don't. But like you thick and thin, no matter who the person is, right, left, say, I stand up for the rule of law. And that's what makes you very different.
Yeah, and the best proof of that is when I gave my 1 and 6 minute defense of President Trump on the floor of the Senate, I never mentioned the name President Trump because I was defending the Constitution. The Constitution was being violated when he was being impeached on non-impeachable grounds. And so I was there to defend the Constitution and the rule of law. That's what I do all the time. I don't pick my clients. You know, the Bible has an interesting rule. It tells judges two things and prosecutors, just two things. Don't take bribes. That's obvious. The second is don't recognize faces. Lo takir panim, the original Hebrew. Don't recognize faces. Don't ever, ever do justice based on who the person is. Do it based on what they did. And it's been my life. I've, taken that as the mantra of my life. I don't recognize faces. No matter who you are, if you've been treated unjustly, I will defend you.
All right. Well, that's a perfect segue because there's two people right now that say they're being treated unjustly. John Bolton, the president's former national security advisor, and James Comey, the former FBI director. I get the president makes it very clear he doesn't like them. But based on the evidence and the indictment against each of them, is their case solely, hey, the president of the United States is coming after me, or do they have legal issues that they need to be worried about?
Well, for me, the issue is this. Let's assume, hypothetically, I know John Bolton. I like him very much. I don't know Comey, although I met him at Harvard, at law school. I don't know him. But let's assume, this is a hypothetical. Let's assume two things, that both are guilty, that they both committed the crimes that they are accused of. Number two, that neither of them ever would have been prosecuted for the crimes if they hadn't been made to be seen as enemies. Let's assume those two are both true. I don't think there should be prosecutions based on selective targeting, even of guilty people. If you should be treated equally. If people aren't generally indicted for doing what they, and we know that. We know that from Hillary Clinton, where Comey said what she did wrong, probably committed a crime, but nobody has ever prosecuted for that, so he didn't prosecute for that. I think the same thing was true with Joe Biden. where they said, well, probably what he did was a violation, but we don't go after people like that, particularly old people like that. You have to have equal justice under the law. And to my mind, if either Comey or Bolton can demonstrate that they were selected and targeted, that they were subject to the Lavrenti Beria Joseph Stalin conversation where Beria, the head of the KGB, says to Stalin, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. That's not the American way. And so we don't target people in this country. And by the way, there's nothing new about that. John Kennedy targeted Roy Cohn. Thomas Jefferson targeted his political enemies as soon as he got into power. The Alien and Sedition Act, passed under President Adams, was designed to get Adams' enemies, well, even though Adams didn't necessarily support the law, his administration used it. It goes back to the beginning of the Republic, and it's wrong. We should never have targeted prosecutions, even of guilty people. I don't approve of what happened to even members of the mafia, Al Capone. Well, we can't get him on the murder, so we'll get him on the taxes. That's a harder case because, we know he did the murders. But when you have somebody who has done things that others have done, for example, taking classified material home in order to use it for your book, it's very common. It's happened all the time throughout our history. And we don't generally prosecute for that. And we shouldn't be selecting people for prosecution. So it'd be interesting to see how this plays out because there are some pretty sympathetic judges to these defendants in these cases.
Well, that's the other thing is that you see a lot of these judges being more sympathetic because it's Trump going after somebody than the merits of it. And I will say this, having served around people who have access to classified information over the last 26 years of my career, I will say a lot of people do get prosecuted and face consequences for the improper mishandling of classified information.
Yeah.
I do want to, though, with the time we have, there's a couple issues I need to hit with you because they're important. You were in an interview the other day that I thought was fascinating. And when you were talking about people who we talk about the Constitution, due process, you suggested that people who are in this country illegally, and the reporter asked you, or the interviewer asked you, what do you think should happen to them? And you said, deport them. And please correct me if I got this wrong. But what I heard was they should be deported and then make the case, as opposed to having the opportunity to make the case before they were deported. Is that accurate? And if so, why did you come down that way?
No, what I said was if there's probable cause, if there's a very substantial basis for their deportability, and they're dangerous, there's nothing wrong with deporting them first, initially, and then having them go to the American embassy or somewhere else and seek a hearing. And then if they win in the hearing, they can be brought back. That's happened in a couple of these recent cases. They were brought back to the United States. But it seems to me that the president does have an enormous amount of power and authority to get illegal people who are clearly illegal out of the country. For example, a paradigmatic case would be this. You get somebody who is clearly deportable. But the question is, where do you have to deport him? You can't deport him to a country where he'll be killed. You can't deport him to a country that won't take him. But you don't have to hold him in the country. So there should be a method by which the country could be rid of him, and then there can be a debate and a legal proceeding as to where he goes.
So when we talk about due process, the folks on the left argue that I have a right, if I'm in this country, whether I'm a citizen or not, to have a hearing before an action is taken against me. But what you're saying is, no, you have a right for a hearing, but you can be deported first.
Let me give you an example. If a person is picked up on a murder charge in the United States, the first thing they do is they put him in jail. He doesn't get out. And only later does he have a chance to challenge that at a bail proceeding. And if he loses in the bail proceeding, he stays in jail and gets a chance to challenge it at trial. If an American citizen can be detained without a full hearing, a full due process hearing, why should an alien necessarily get greater safeguards? The key is that nothing should be done to anybody without due process at some point. Question is always one of timing. And in the criminal justice system, sometimes people stay in jail a whole year before they have an opportunity to challenge their detention. And so we shouldn't be giving greater rights to aliens than to citizens. Now, I'd like to see it speeded up in both cases. I think it's a scandal that so many people are at Rikers Island today in New York who haven't had any kind of a hearing, but they're presumed guilty because they've been arrested. So I'd like to speed that process up. I'd like to speed the deportation process up as well. But you can't completely deny the president the power to take these kinds of actions to protect the United States citizens.
The president's taking an action by firing Lisa Cook, the Fed governor, I should say, apologies, saying I have the right to fire her for cause because she's committed egregious acts on mortgage fraud and all this stuff. I have said this with, again, going back to my no legal basis for saying this, that cause is very different than a guilty plea. If in a workplace, if you don't dress appropriately or not adhere to the hours or et cetera, that's cause. That doesn't mean you're guilty of a crime. So does the president ultimately, will the Supreme Court rule that the president has the authority to do this?
Well, it's interesting because under the unitary executive, of course, the president has the authority to fire anybody from the executive branch of the government. The problem is there are certain areas that are in between the legislative branch and the executive branch, and obviously the Fed's one of them. It was independently set up by Congress with rules, and the rules talk about firing for cause because Congress didn't want the president to have total control over the Fed and a handful of other organizations that are only quasi part of the executive branch. So it's a very complicated question.
Okay. Professor Alan Dershowitz, his 55th book, The Preventive State, is out and available. Go to Amazon right now, pick it up, and find out what we should be preventing instead of reacting to. Professor, always appreciate it. I come away smarter every time we talk.
Well, I appreciate it very much. And just one more word about my book. Because I defended Trump, many bookstores won't carry this book. And the only place you can get it is on Amazon.
No kidding.
And even with the New York Times, they refused to review it. They reviewed every single one of my books until I defended Trump. But the day I defended Trump, they stopped reviewing my books. So if you really want to get back at those who are canceling me because of my defense of Donald Trump, best way to do it is go on Amazon and buy the book, The Preventive State.
All right. Well, the show links have it in there if you want to just get it clickable. Obviously, go to Amazon, search Alan Dershowitz. You have 54 other books to get to as well. But The Preventative State's the most current one. Thank you, sir, for being here as always.
Thank you for having me.
What a conversation. That is, he never disappoints, does he? The angles, the legality. And I wanted to ask that Pentagon press question because so many in the liberal media are making this seem like it's such a big deal. Oh, my God, it's an attack on the press. The bottom line is, in case you haven't been following this that close, the Pentagon put out new guidelines for the media. And it basically, prior to these new regulations, the media could pretty much walk freely throughout the entire Pentagon. Like, they couldn't obviously go into secure rooms, but they could walk into anybody else's office just the way, they were an employee of anyone else in the Pentagon. It was pretty ridiculous. The Pentagon said, no, you need an escort. Hello. And by the way, there is no other government building that you have that kind of access to. None. Full stop. The White House, the State Department, none. The Defense Department has allowed this to happen for years and the press has gone in. But what Alan Dershowitz said about this was so important. You don't have the legal right to try to ask someone to break the law, i.e. to give you classified information. And if you don't want to abide by that, then you don't get access to the building. Like, that's the trade-off. You want to come into our building? You can't go and solicit people to break the law. That's what people are doing. So you want to keep covering the Pentagon? Feel free. You can sit outside every day of the week, 7 days a week. I don't really care. You can make phone calls, do everything. But we, the Pentagon, aren't going to allow you to do that. Okay, that's important. Let me just talk a little bit about this weekend because this No Kings rally was so insane. The president actually commented on Air Force One about it. Let me show you it.
What's your response to the protests over the weekend, the No Kings protests?
I think it's a joke. I looked at the people. They're not representative of this country. And I looked at all the brand new signs paid for, I guess it was paid for by Soros and other radical left lunatics. It looks like it was. We're checking it out. The demonstrations were very small, very ineffective, and the people were whacked out. When you look at those people, those are not representative of the people of our country.
Mr. President, besides San Francisco...
By the way, I'm not a king. I'm not a king. I work my ass off to make our country great. That's all it is. I'm not a king at all.
Yeah. By the way, I went to a No Kings rally last November, one that actually mattered. Because all these people love to sit around and talk about democracy being under attack on we're 16 days from the election here in Virginia, New Jersey, California, wherever. Democracy works. They just don't like the outcome. And when they don't like the outcome, then they say, oh my God, he's a king. He uses the courts. He goes through the process. this is the thing, is that when Democrats don't get their outcome, then someone's bad, right? That's the idea. Republicans in charge, democracy is under attack. When they're in charge and they suppress people and they do all these things, well, that's okay. It's just whenever it's them that doesn't get the power, they blame everyone else and say democracy is under attack. I thought about this because it was really interesting. Not only did November we actually have a No Kings rally, we did. We voted. And that's what we'll do again here in Virginia. I just voted this weekend, actually. I put a little thing on my Instagram if you want to see me voting for the Republican ticket. But I want to share with you a couple of quick, interesting things. If Trump was a king, why would he have let the National Mall stay open for this protest? Because here's the interesting thing. We're in the middle of a government shutdown. When Obama was president, he shut the National Mall down during the government shutdown. President Trump kept it open and allowed these people to, as crazy as they looked and nutty as they sounded, to exercise their First Amendment right. So for all of the talk about democracy being under attack and a king, the irony was that it was happening during a government shutdown, and it was their guy, Obama, that actually shut down the National Mall when he was in charge. Quite the opposite with Trump. See, because again, they don't want to tell you that because it doesn't make sense and it doesn't help. But that's the irony of this. And by the way, at least the one that was here in D.C., close to Virginia, you know, the funny thing is, as I said, we're 16 days away from an election in Virginia, 16 days away from an election in New Jersey. If you were really smart, you would have had those people knocking on doors, going out there doing electioneering stuff. Instead, you took them all off the field, had them sit around, talk to each other in silly costumes. It was kind of funny if you think about it. What a bunch of dum-dums. But the president wasn't done then. There's a left-wing version of Twitter called Bluesky. I've never really been on it, except for this weekend. I clicked on it for the first time because the White House joined Bluesky, right? It's their left-wing Twitter. And he trolled the left. He put out a brand new video. Take a look at this thing. It's awesome.
My fellow Americans, our movement is far from over. In fact, our fight has only just begun. We are one movement, one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So with American pride swelling in our hearts and American courage stirring in our souls, I say these words to you tonight. We will make America great again.
I just love that. I mean, trolling the left. This is what's so different about this term. They absolutely get it. It's fabulous. I love it. Anyway, thanks for being with us to kick off the week. As I mentioned, tomorrow, Bill O'Reilly. Wednesday, Jody Arrington, the House Budget Committee Chairman. On Friday, Victor Davis Hanson will be an amazing week. Thank you all for being here. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe and notification button. I've got a great column coming out tomorrow at SeanSpicer.com. Please continue to take the link of the show, send it to 5 friends, join in the premiere at 6 p.m. Eastern, or just have them watch the show. Help us continue to grow. Thanks for all you're doing for this show. I appreciate everything you do. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.